Good morning, folks. This is Deb Delipenner, and this is your short take. You know, for months we've been hearing about fentanyl, fentanyl at the border. It's coming over the border, okay? Because obviously Joe Biden and Mr. Mayorkas are not doing their jobs. We're trying to impeach Mr. Mayorkas right now. You've heard Marjorie Taylor Greene rant and rave about fentanyl. She has difficulty saying the word indictable, but I mean, we can't account for everything. But the fact of the matter is that fentanyl in the streets is a concern. Opioids on the street are a concern. But I consider a bigger concern the fact that number 45, that would be Donald Trump, literally ran a pill mill, a drug den out of the White House, out of the medical staff office. The medical staff office, which was under the direction of his administration, and the doctor of the White House doctor during his administration was none other than Texas Congressman Ronny Jackson, who has also been the subject of a scathing report in 2021. And we'll get to that. But first, we're going to talk about what went on in the White House under Donald Trump with regard to controlled substances. And the two controlled substances I'm talking most about are Ambien and Provigil. One is a sedative, the other is a stimulant. Okay. So what did the report find? I got some notes here. Okay. This report came out January 8th of this year. These drugs were dispensed without verifying patient identities. Opioids and sleeping medications were not properly accounted for and were tracked using sloppy handwritten records that were full of errors. Now, the dispensing of these drugs did not comply with either the federal government or the Department of Defense regulations. Ineligible staffers were not only given these drugs, but they were also given free medical care and surgery at military medical facilities in violation of federal regulations and Department of Defense regulations. They were not billed for these surgeries and this medical care. And they were also given controlled substances after their care. I will put these reports, will all be in the YouTube version of this video, okay? Everything, including some of the handwritten pages from these logs where these records were kept, some of which are scratched out beyond belief. So these drugs were given out without regard for safety standards, and therefore they compromised the health and well-being of the people they were giving these drugs to. There was absolutely no oversight for any of this. And it was a regular practice for people to make up go packs before White House trips. Let me read to you what one witness testified. A regular practice was to make up go bags of prescription meds to White House staff before overseas trips. Quote, one of our requirements was to go ahead and make up packets for the controlled medications, and those would typically be Ambien or Provigil, and typically both. Over-the-counter drugs were simply left in bins for anybody to take at any time. No control whatsoever. Now, it wasn't just Ambien and Provigil. You will see when you look at these logs that there are other drugs involved here. Fentanyl, something we hear about all the time from the GOP. Fentanyl, the big problem with fentanyl. Ativan, tramadol, ketamine, morphine, diazepam, and lorazepam. What possible use could these people have for these drugs except to abuse them? Spare me. Is the White House that stressful? I guess under Donald Trump it would be, to some degree. Now, in terms of spending, let's talk a little bit about that. The report found that they also spent on brand name doses of Ambien. They spent $46,500 from 2017 to 2019, instead of using the generic equivalent, which is 174 times less expensive than brand name Ambien. Same thing with Provigil. They spent $98,000 on this, on the brand name drug during the same period, instead of using the generic, which is 55 times less expensive. But please, we spare no expense when it comes to Donald Trump and his entourage. And Ronny Jackson, let's just talk a little bit about him, because he was the White House doctor under Donald Trump. And Ronny Jackson, who is now our esteemed representative from the state of Texas, was also the subject of his own Inspector General report in 2021. And this is what the Inspector General found out about Ronny Jackson. He, quote, disparaged, belittled, bullied, and humiliated his subordinates and fostered a toxic work environment. He also, quote, engaged in appropriate conduct involving the use of alcohol, end quote, during 2 presidential trips, one to Manila and the other to Bariloche, Argentina. On one of these trips, he made remarks about a staffer's breasts and buttocks, and then was banging on her door in the middle of the night in the hotel, screaming that he needed her, disrupting all kinds of people on that floor. If you consider this the kind of people that should be working in and running our government, there is clearly something wrong with you. We spend all kinds of time, the Republicans spend all kinds of time making crass remarks about people of color and drugs, and talking about immigrants coming over the border who are criminals and rapists. We have a rapist, a convicted rapist, running for the presidency right now, the front runner for the GOP, and a man with 91 criminal indictments against him. The Republicans have a lot of nerve to talk about anybody trying to come over the border and build a better life for themselves, when they have scum at every level of their political party, if that's what you want to call it. But I maintain that the GOP is no longer a legitimate political party. It is now a movement of authoritarian rulers. And if you think that when Donald Trump returns to the White House, that it isn't going to be worse, then you certainly are living in the ozone. And if you don't think that abusing drugs is part of this game, take a good look at his speeches at his rallies. If he's not on drugs, maybe he should be, because he is making no sense. His rallies are getting more and more unhinged, and it is pretty clear that this is a man who should be in jail, not a man who should be in the Oval Office. I will talk to you all later.